If you don't know Matt Cole, one thing that's clear in this conversation is how thoughtful he is. He brings a lot of care to his answers as we go through discussing his career as a player mostly, some non-playing experiences as well, and just the goals he has set and the ceilings he has hit and then tried to raise, trying to grow the sport. And we talk a little bit about those roles and responsibilities of a player versus a non-player and just how they're connected and separated and what the expectations should be for yourself versus the community generally when you're trying to just improve and grow as a person, as a player, versus trying to grow Roundnet just for the sake of growing Roundnet. It's a challenging thing to sustain. I know I can speak to that. And otherwise, we just have a fun chat talking about some of his experiences. So I hope you all enjoy it. Feel free to link timestamps as always if you want to dig deeper on any conversation topics. And if you get to the end, let me know in the comments. And as always, appreciate the support for those who are tipping me, helping me make this stuff happen. Really appreciate you. And just last note, I did get a haircut, so enjoyed me having much longer hair in the video. Your relationship with Roundnet and how it's changed over time. I mean, like you've been playing for gosh, many, many years, Matt. Like where did your relationship with Roundnet kind of begin, and what have been some of the big like changes over time?
Yeah. So I shared a lot of this context when I did the USAR Instagram story takeover, and I was laughing because I posted way too much that day, but there was more than I had even like realized that I had to talk about. It's been in my life a long time. So started playing in college, and it was really first like year and a half was very much just like this was a good, way to get outside, good sport to play. I played like my roommates and I would go to the pickups and play, and then started kind of taking it more seriously after I went to my first tournament and saw people who were good play. Specifically, it was Frederick, Logan, and Brian. At the time, Elysium was their team name, and then I don't remember who Fred was playing with, if I'm being frank, but I do remember those three were in the finals. I had lost in the first round to Rahul, very funnily, also playing in his first tournament. But saw them play. I was like, oh, this sport can actually be really impressive, because everyone at Baylor was like, even the best players at Baylor were like pretty good, but it was clear there was like a step above. And then my roommates and I, as well as other people from the Baylor Spikeball Club, decided to go to, also funny aside, at the time it was the Baylor Spikeball Club. Now it's the Baylor Roundnet Club. I don't remember when or why that switched, but just a funny aside.
I have an idea as to why.
You're right. I'm sure there are lots of copyright, trademark stuff there. But anyway, we decided to drive like 12 hours from Waco to Atlanta for the 2019 College Nationals tournament. And that was another time where I got to, one, see like a ton of people there playing. It was like a huge tournament. And then I also got to see people who were even better play. And that was a very kind of big turning point for me, because it was, okay, I had now, committed, 24 hours round trip to drive to this tournament, seeing all these people play. As a funny anecdote here, PJ Showalter, who at the time was, best player in the world, or at least on the best team in the world, was the coach for the Asbury team. And that was back when we did paper, like we reported everything on paper, and you had to go report your scores to someone who was like your pool's like reporter. And PJ was my pool's reporter, and I was very bad. And so and for whatever reason, I was reporting it whenever I would lose. Feels like the winner should report, but anyway,
you're a pretty good student, so that kind of thing tracks for me.
Sure.
It's like doing it very, very by the book guy.
Sure. But I had to report, my first interaction with PJ was reporting that I had lost 15-5 to him. So that was a humbling first experience there. But anyway, that's when it kind of shifted to being like, oh, I actually like this sport and want to play it a lot. But it was still, from then to like just through the rest of college, I was focused on like being a college student, all the things that came with that, graduating, getting a job. Like I knew that the sport existed and was great and like was really fun for me, but it wasn't like much more than that. It was like a big hobby, but there was also something very built in with, there was organized pickups, there was college tournaments that I would go to with the college team. There was tournaments I wouldn't have to drive very far to. Like there was built in, to it. It wasn't hard to be a part of the Roundnet community in Texas and in Baylor.
Mm.
So that was that. Then once I graduated, that was a big inflection point for me because I knew I was moving to Denver, just because of the job that I had got, and I knew that as an adult, like I didn't have that built-in, structure anymore. I had to, if I wanted to keep taking Roundnet seriously as a hobby, it was going to require a lot more of my own money, flights, time. I'd have to like carve out time for myself to practice. I'd have to find people to play pickup with, etc. Um, and I don't really remember the decision being made like very specifically, but at some point I had just ultimately decided like, hey, I want to do this. Um, and that was also the summer when tournaments started happening again after COVID. It was the 2021 summer. So I think a big part of it was I got Premier, had like a decently successful first Premier tournament, played with Luke, Marshall, and made the pro division. And I think all of that was very affirming that like I actually was like decent at the sport. And if I wanted to take it seriously, it was like there was some upside. It wasn't just like I'd be hitting my head against a wall, like buying all these flights to lose the first round all the time.
Yeah, I gotta ask, like when you earned that like pro division qualification with Luke, that the first time playing a full season in the STS, like what did that mean? Because you said like you didn't really make a super active decision, but then all of a sudden you found yourself as a this pro
Right.
label. Like, did you think of much of it at the time then, or did it take time before you started to really reflect on what it meant to be like a pro player?
I think I knew and felt that it was a very cool accomplishment and like was proud to have done it. And, I knew that we had beaten some good teams to get there and all that. But like the reality of the sport in 2021 and that pro division was like, I think we only had like 3 or 4 results or like points worth of results that got us in there. It wasn't like we had, there are teams nowadays who have traveled to like 12 tournaments and they still won't make pro. And it's like, and that's just because it's very competitive now and there's lots of tournaments and lots of points up for grabs. And like, it's not at all to say that Luke and I just like stumbled in the pro division, but I think we were like the 15 seed, maybe 16. We were low seeded. Sure. We had kind of like squeaked in there again with some great results. It wasn't like it was just by accident and it was like, who the heck are these guys? But it wasn't something that was like, I'd set this goal at the start of the season to make pro and then it happened. And it's like, oh my gosh, I was very proud. And so I guess it was like a really cool thing, but it didn't, I hadn't really internalized it that much yet. Played the pro division, very cool experience. Also got to watch Fred and Rahul win that year's, what was then the national championship. That was really cool. And at some point in there, I had made the decision that I wanted to ask Grant Clapp to be my partner for the next season. I always joke that probably my best ever skill as a Roundnet player was seeing the potential of Grant and I like gave him the whole pitch. I was like, we'll just play the season, it'll just be me and you. I remember texting him very distinctly. I was like, I know we can win the championship one day. Like we're going to, work and we're going to do it, that kind of thing. That was very much like a switch flipping, like of me saying, I'm going to now take this seriously as an adult. That was also when I started on the, what's now kind of become a running bit with me. But for good reason, the Y Spike workout plan, which was like a weight training program that Luke Mowry of my friend from Texas, and also very good player, had created. And so I was like, my pitch is like, hey, well, I'll be working in the gym, getting stronger, playing pickup, all that, like we're going to win the championship.
Yeah. I mean, like things that you would expect from like a pro player, right? Like just like there's like a plan
exactly
to improve. Like you're not just like winging at these tournaments. You're like, I'm going to train. I'm
right.
going to physically get stronger, all those things. So it makes sense.
Yeah, we're gonna like pick out all these tournaments.
Matt Cole, talent scout for picking up.
Exactly. That was my number one accomplishment.
Yeah, it's selling yourself a little short, I'll say, but that is, I mean, yeah. Sometimes people will shout like great partner selection. I know that's like a California local thing. So
yeah, no,
you definitely did well there too.
I have. But that was a big. exactly what you said. It was like, hey, if we're going to take this sport seriously, and like as an adult, I'm going to be spending my money that I'm now earning at my job, like why would I not take it seriously? It would be kind of silly too, in my mind. Like if I'm gonna fly to this tournament, I better put my best foot forward and try to win it, because
Sure.
it's if I'm gonna take it seriously as a sport, the whole point of sport is to win. Obviously, there are lots of ancillary benefits, but like that's the goal. Is like I'm not flying this tournament to hope that I lose. So that was, I think, a big switch flip. There was like taking it from like a fun hobby that was, you know, positive for me and my health, and then it was like, okay, I'm gonna like try and take this seriously. And it sounds a little bit silly, and I recognize that, because like there's little to no money to be made as a pro player in Roundnet. There's little to no, you know, whatever else, like status or anything, but like that wasn't really that important to me. I wasn't optimizing for those things. I was optimizing for the fact that I like liked Roundnet, and I wanted to do it to the best of my ability, and you know, those were the things that I saw, and I think I'm really glad about that. I think, you know, there are lots of things in life where you can,
there's all the other benefits you're getting, right? Like you're
right.
You're training in a gym, like most people don't do that very well, myself included. So it's just like there's health benefits that you're getting by like attaching this one goal to a lot of other things.
Right.
You know, to say nothing of like the community and the friendships that you've gained and you know, developed over the years, like just like strictly like selfish, like Matt Cole, no connection to other people, like pushing yourself hard to do a hard task. Like that's a good thing to pursue.
Exactly.
Like letting Roundnet be like a pursuit instead of like a, I guess it's usually more viewed as a hobby. There's like even like hobby divisions,
right,
like basic beginner divisions for folks, and that's also good. But you were like, I want more out of this, so I'm going to put more into it.
Yeah, and I think it was exactly what you said. It was a matter of just like deciding. It was a matter of like deciding, okay, I'm going to take this seriously as an independent adult. I'm going to treat it like, you know, best of my ability, you know, a sport. I'm going to try and be like an athlete, again, to the best of my ability with whatever size the sport is. And I'd say that was like really my primary mindset so that would have been what, September 2021 was when I moved. And then through 2022 season, I'd say that was like really where my head was at. That was also, then we started we're talking about ancillary benefits. Another ancillary benefit of traveling to all these tournaments and spending all this time with these people and like staying at hotels with them and Airbnbs, whatever, is you start to make really great friendships and really like find people that you cherish. I already had that with a lot of the Texas crew, but now it started to also like expand into people across the country, and then eventually the world, which is really cool. But yeah, I'd say through like 2022, I started to like really have all these people that I valued so much, like their time and their friendships. And I can name a million people, and if they're listening to this, they know who they are. But yeah, so then I'd say after, at some point in 2023, I'd say that season, it started to become, there was like two relationships with Roundnet in my mind. Like still very much had like the athlete focus, still very much like, you know, playing as much as I can, doing lots of like solo drills, which I know sounds crazy for some people who are like not like who see Roundnet as a hobby, but like I was doing like drills by myself like a lot. But then the other was like, I wanted to be in the sport so that I could see my friends. It was like, hey, if I want to see XYZ person who lives on the East Coast, I have to go to a tournament, or not have to, but one of the easiest ways to see them is to go to a tournament that I also know they're going to. So like then there was like two relationships there where it was like this really built-in, like strong community that I was really thankful for.
Right.
And so, yeah. And then I'd say getting to, and I'm kind of jumping quickly through time now, but
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Those two things have been how I've seen Roundnet kind of up until where I'm at now. And it's gotten me to a lot of, you know, I've accomplished the goals I set in the sport. Like I wrote down my goal was to win the championship. 2024, my goal was to get on Team USA and to win the squad championship. I'm thankful to say we were able to accomplish that, and big shout out to the team there. Um, and then, yeah, I've have so many wonderful people that I'm thankful to call friends, and I've had these like really cool experiences, like worlds or just all these things uh, with. So yeah, say that's been my relationship with Roundnet up until kind of how we're speaking now.
Yeah, I love all that. I know like a big challenge in goal setting in sports and anywhere else is like sometimes you achieve the goal and then um, some people ask themselves what's next, and some people are asked like what's next, as if like there always has to be another thing.
Sure.
It sounds like you checked off the one goal last year, winning like the STS championship, and then you just set like another one for this year. So if you're, I'll leave it up to you. I feel like it'd be rude to ask, but like if you're deciding to set more goals, awesome, and if you're not, like that's okay too, as far as Roundnet's concerned. What I wanted to peel back a little more on, because you were mentioning like you took the sport so seriously. I think a really fascinating thing that a lot of people don't know about pro Roundnet players, I always try to air quote it, is like what their role is in the sport, or like how they give and take the sport. You talked a lot about how you've given and taken socially, which is great. You've also like put in a lot of things for yourself to like benefit. And in my mind, I think like I would say any pro that is like calling themselves that should be taking the sport in a similar capacity seriously, like training, not just showing up and winging it. But I'm curious if, separate from your own like achievement, your own like growth and benefits, whether you've done them or if you just like have seen them around, what you make of this like really big passion you've developed, and like what you maybe can contribute, or what a pro can contribute another way to making the sport bigger.
Yeah. I it's a good question. In an ideal world, I see that there but that there realistically will be disconnect between the pro players and the people who are growing the sport and putting time and effort into like making the sport bigger, or marketing the sport, developing new players, that kind of thing. I know that that's opinion is not shared by some people, and I understand that. But I think the simple reality is we only have so much time in the day, and we especially only have so much time in the day if you have, and with Roundnet, there are very few people who, being a part of Roundnet in whatever capacity it is their full-time job. Like, okay, so I have 40 hours of my week that are blocked off to my job. I have another, set of hours that are blocked off to like spending time with my wife, hanging out with people, like normal human things. It's like I only have so much time to give Roundnet, and that's great, and like that's how it should be. Obviously, if I could be a professional Roundnet athlete, like if it was big enough, then I've got more time. But anyway, so if you're going to be a pro athlete, like you said, you should be dedicating a lot of your time to like the athletics. It's like, how do I get better at this sport? So, again, you probably won't have time to like host tournaments, to, come up and test all these rule changes, that kind of thing. That said, I think all good players in the sport, because it is such a small community, do have a duty to like not be elitist. And I'm not saying this because this happens. I'm more just kind of like speaking generally. Like, I do think there is a duty to, talk to people, be open, like not take themselves too seriously. Like, the sport is good because of the community, and people like spend time in the sport because they love being around it. And it's like we should be part of like building that. But I don't think pro players also have responsibility to be like the backbone of the sport, and like it's a different role. It's like you need to have people that are good at the sport, then you need to have people that are good at growing the sport, and like I think that is healthy. I'll even, very anecdotally, like I ran the Colorado Climb in 2022, and like was great, glad I did it. But like when I was reflecting on my goals for the 2023 season, I was like, I want to still be like competing at a high level in Roundnet. I know how much time it took to run that tournament, and like I just don't have enough time to do both. And so that's why I haven't hosted the Climb again. It's like I've only got so much time to give to Roundnet. And so
I'll give you a not yet. You could always run it in like 5 to 10 years.
Right. Exactly. Like if I'm not giving time to the athletic pursuit of Roundnet, then I got more time to be a tournament director or whatever it is. But that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I I think it's interesting. Like there's only so much time that people put into any particular thing anywhere.
Yeah.
And then like you go back to like the first tournament you played, right? Like I would bet that when you saw Brian and Logan at that tournament, like there's a 50-50 chance that they were the best players there and running the tournament, because that was
Sure.
just like, that's how the sport was, right? It was just like the players, like someone had to run the tournament, and the people that had been to tournaments were good players. They knew how to do it. So yeah, there's like now like this divergence. That's just like one example, but there's a lot of different like things to be done. I'm curious, like what balance you sense. You talk about like all this travel. I think it's a really fascinating thing in the US because it's so expensive to travel. Like, how critical is it for you as a high level player, having developed over the past few years, to be traveling to all these tournaments where that is a huge time and like financial expenditure to go to all these events? How much of that was like, do you think like necessary versus you talk about like the social and connection side of things, versus
Yeah.
it being maybe like watering those plants of like getting to be with community and maybe to be like the best player possible if you're optimizing for that alone. Like how many tournaments does a pro level player need to be traveling to get those reps to see the players?
Right. It's a hard question. I'm a big believer that tournament reps are worth like 5 times pickup reps and probably 10 times worth, uh, you know, by yourself drills reps. Maybe that's a little inflated, but I don't even know if it like tournament reps are so critical. And there's also the factor that if you want to be really good at Roundnet, because it's such a small sport, like you're going to be playing like the same, say 30-40 people, like especially now with when you have like segmented pro divisions. Like there have been tournaments, like runs of tournaments where I've played, like a few pro divisions in a row, and it's like, okay, I like have only played these 20 people, and it's like that's just a reality of a small sport, and also if we're segmenting pro divisions. So point being, as much as I kind of wish, there was a world where it's like, well, no, I mean, there is a world, like there are definitely people who like they only get their reps in pickup, and then they like, they grind over a winter or something, and then they come out and it's like, oh wow, they're like really good now. That's definitely true, but I do think it is like pretty critical to play a lot of tournaments, which is unfortunate because, like you said, travel is expensive. It's also, it takes your time. It's physically tiring. It's emotionally tiring. But like if you're optimizing for being like the best Roundnet player possible, like I think you got to travel to, I don't know, like 6 or 7 tournaments. Yeah, like once a month. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. And there's also the reality of like the points race. Like if you want to get points to play in the pro division in the STS, like
that's a whole separate lens of like being bought in on like the STS goals, which I don't mean to like belittle, but more so like just putting in isolation, like getting better generally, right? Like a lot of players, as an aside, are like, oh, I want to be a premier spikeball STS player, but that has like no connection to your skill level, and so it only means as much as you want it to mean. I'm saying that as a formerly premier player, so maybe I'm just disgruntled. The question I wanted to ask when you talked about tournament reps, and this is another angle I've got towards like just growing local community, is there's been a bit of a resurgence in the Colorado scene of just a couple more people, like you said, like people picking up the slack, leaning in, getting pickups going, getting tournaments going.
I do, with whatever the tournament structure ends up being in 2025, and I won't claim to know anything about that. I would love there to be a world where I really liked, I think you had talked about it in another one of these, Ben, like there is a lot of money that is being spent in Roundnet and is going to like American Airlines and Uber, when it's like, in a great world, that doesn't have to happen. Obviously there is some reality of travel in a sport, like that will never be divorced from it. But it would be, and again, I won't claim to know what this world looks like, but there would be a great world where it's like, okay, hey, however much money I've set aside each month for travel to Roundnet tournaments, I could like half that and put the other half, like if I still want to spend it on Roundnet, like to the local scene or to that kind of thing. And that wouldn't deter my ability to be a top level Roundnet athlete. Maybe I'm, painting kind of an idyllic world there, but it is, people always talk about there's not enough money in Roundnet, and like there's truth to that, but it's like there are still
But
lots of
people
people who
spend
are
so
putting
much money.
exactly, and it's like it's going to other parties, and that will never not, every sport that's the case.
Yep.
But with Roundnet especially, I think it's a very acute problem. So I'll just say that.
I can tease, because this was like published from the QS Roundnet and like in my volunteer capacity there. Like, there's like the goal for the national series and how it's hoping to evolve is to kind of like tie together the idea that like high level players should they don't have to be running the local tournaments, but there should be an incentive for them to show up in their local communities, and their local communities should be wanting to like rally around them. And then similarly, if you want to travel a lot, great, but like the incentives shouldn't be that you should have to, or even maybe that you should even be able to benefit by like paying to play and like just flying to like all these places to rack up points or whatever. Like that is those elements are very much part of how like the national series for like the US is evolving, which again, like, does anybody read it? Maybe, because no one's really giving me feedback on it. So you can always like give feedback, but like that's what we're doing. And yeah, like
Sure.
just as an aside, like, yeah, we'll continue doing our hard work over there. And we always appreciate when people ask us thoughtful questions or when they chip in and help out. So yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Like if money could go into registration pools, then all of a sudden,
right.
instead of Spirit Airlines, all of a sudden, like you can do a lot of the things. I know you got to run the Colorado Climb. There's just like so many line items that you have to choose between. And it's nice when you get to pick a couple more of them off the list. Of course,
Agreed.
one of them being trying to like support players in like a professional capacity, which I personally continue to grapple with as far as like how much value the players add to the sport versus like me aspirationally wanting to just pay the players because I would like for the sport to be more professional. It's a tough balance to walk. But yeah, I think there will continue to be like room for improvement there. Related to kind of how much travel you've done and like how much you've pursued Roundnet more like, over time, I wanted to touch on a little bit like what kind of motivation maybe has changed. In particular, like winning the STS Championship is something that has at least a lot of lore behind it compared to like the US National Championship carving its own path, and the World Championship being both new and also, at least the squad side of things, the US still being the team to beat, obviously not the individual team to beat anymore, the squad. Like, sure, how your motivation maybe has changed after winning that, because I've heard different accountings of that feeling like it takes a lot of wind out of your sails.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said it didn't take some wind out of my sails. I can think to so many times in 2022 and 2023 where I would, whatever, wake up early or go practice after work, and I would tell myself like, hey, I'm doing this for this goal. And it's very tangible. And if, you could always, there are always more goals I could set. Like I could set the goal to three-peat, or I could set the goal to, become the winningest player in STS history or whatever. I'm not saying these are realistic. I'm just saying there are higher things to get to. And I frankly am not motivated by those. It goes without saying that if this was a sport that would sustain me and my family, my wife, for while achieving those goals, it could also like sustain the bills, then that might become a lot more motivating. But like if this sport is the reality of that, it is like an extracurricular that I have to fund, those goals don't seem as enticing. So for 2024, Grant and I had we kind of put our heads together and like we were like, hey, let's make this goal, let's get to Worlds. Grant did not have the ability to go to Worlds in 2022, and so we were both really excited to like play together at Worlds in 2024. Or we didn't have really input over the teams, at the very least be in London together on the team, and we were glad to play together. But yeah, so we were able to set that goal, and like Worlds provided a very clear like marker, like, hey, there's a big tournament that you have to qualify for, kind of thing. But yeah, again, I've accomplished a lot of the things I wanted to do in the sport, and I don't have a lot of like intrinsic motivation to do XYZ accomplishments in the sport any longer. I think that's a big part of why my relationship with the sport in 2025 and onward might be a lot more removed and maybe a lot more just community based And yeah, I mean, it's good. The sport, it requires a lot of your time now. If you want to be a pro player, like it, because people are so good and the floor of the sport has raised a lot since, like, say 2019, like you talked about it, like people could just never practice and then show up at a tournament and wing it and do well. I don't know how much that's the case anymore. Like maybe some exceptions, but the large majority of players who will be in the 2024 pro division at the championship, like, are players who practice a lot, take it seriously, travel, etc. So it's like, there's no world where I could just like do that in 2025 and just like take it easy and still be a pro player. Like, and that's good. And so, kind of going roundabout now, but hopefully that answers the question.
No, that's perfect. One thing I wanted to dig into further was kind of that mention, that like that switch flipping of like you and everybody else that plays around it is paying to play, and it would be so amazing if you could earn an income, sustain yourself even, right? Like not even just like a small thing, through performance achievement and the like. I'm curious, and this is kind of bleeding into, you're someone who is doing some really cool video essays on YouTube. Definitely will like try to put up like, we'll see what happens in the edit here. But just like Matt does some really like awesome video essays, and I know I picked your brain about like your mind on that. But like, as I see it, that's the kind of thing that, if you'll forgive my assumption, like is at least a little entrepreneurial in some way, right? Like continue making video essays, grow a YouTube channel, get all the necessary requirements to get ads on there, and that can make $1, can make more money. I'm sure for you that's something that would be a nice to have.
Right.
In that same vein, for Roundnet, I'm curious, how much have you thought about applying the same like entrepreneurial attitude towards Roundnet, where you do upload your footage online, you make yourself pretty visible for people to watch your games. You're relatively well followed, so I'm just curious if that has crossed your mind, and if it has, what kind of like maybe tactics you thought to employ, and at the same time I can understand like the well, I'll let you answer that for yourself. I don't want to preempt too many things.
No, all good questions and all reasonable. Everything you said was an assumption, was reasonable. I'll say this: my presence online, Roundnet wise, it was always utilitarian, with the goal of like, there was some selfish utilitarian. It was like, I liked filming my games, and I liked that YouTube was basically free file storage, and I also liked the fact, like, for the community, that they could like see it, and that became ever more important as I became better at the sport. Like when I was posting pickup games when I was at Baylor, like they, maybe other Texas players watched, and now it's like I posted a game against like Eisenschläger Sima, probably butchered that pronunciation, but that's fine, at Worlds, and it's like it got like a couple hundred views because like everyone wants to see how good they played, because they played awesome. So it was very utilitarian. It was like, hey, I'm the goal was not, let's make content to do something. Like, I made some reels because they were fun, but like I never took it too seriously. I will say I did have some kind of entrepreneurial maybe visions when I was doing the Colorado Climb. I was like, hey, if this tournament, I sent emails to probably like 200 or so local Colorado companies, and I was like, hey, maybe this could like turn into a thing where it's like it becomes a part of the Colorado like local business community. And we did have one sponsor, which was awesome, and they provided some money and food for the tournament, which was really valuable. And I had like a good working relationship with that sponsor. That was Bird Call, and if you guys are near a Bird Call chicken place, highly recommend. Their food is awesome. But like, it was a lot of work for a single sponsor return, and that kind of took some of the like motivation out there, where it was like, okay, if my goal with Roundnet is to become like a local business, entrepreneur, or however you want to phrase it, it's going to require like tons and tons of work, which is super reasonable. But I just felt that the ceiling was like a little bit capped for a lot of reasons, and ones we've already talked about. But the reality is the economic like scale of Roundnet is pretty small, and so it's like, even if I grew it to this big thing relative to Roundnet, it's like still wouldn't be that huge of a thing. And so to your point about YouTube, one, it's also just been like a creative it's like a creative pursuit of mine that I've had an interest in for a while of like, hey, I like talking about this stuff and wanted to write about it. But also like the scale with something like that is a lot more uncapped. I don't really have any specific visions for it. I am, my current job is great and have no, it's a great, great 9 to 5
Make
job.
sure to cut this part out so that they don't know that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, only good things to say about that.
Makes a lot of sense.
But it's like YouTube. If I put the same amount of time, let's say it would take, I'm making numbers up here. Let's say it could take like 200 hours to get like 2 sponsors for Roundnet, and that could, earn me whatever, a couple $100. I'm making up numbers here. But let's say I could put those same 200 hours to a different extracurricular that has a higher ceiling. It's like that feels a little more of an attractive proposition. So that's kind of how I think about it.
As I see it, like you're climbing a really steep hill, trying to like attract sponsors around it, and you're also climbing a very small hill.
Right.
And so like to climb the hill and try to like build this mountain into like a higher peak is like a very weird thing to do. But the reason it sounds weird is because it's like exceptionally hard, and
it is.
It's like, and it's you have to really want Roundnet to. It's like it's not like no one's obligated to do that. I think is like something that I hope everyone's very aware of, like how like limited the number of people are that are like actually doing
exactly
stuff.
And I'll say this: I salute anyone who sees the vision of Roundnet. Like I was very inspired by like how Preston talked about it. As like he sees the vision of Roundnet as this like ultimate spectator sport. I'm with him. Like I understand that, and like that is very exciting. But like, if I'm being like totally candid, I don't know how much interest I have at being the one to take this sport from where it is now to that vision. And I salute anyone who is taking up that mantle. I think that's awesome. I think I'm just candidly saying that I don't know if it'll be me. I'm not saying never say never, but at least right now that's where my mindset's at.
And goals change, and I think like the other part of it is just like I don't think any one person's going to do that. Like I continue to maintain that like many hands will make lighter work, and I think like that same vein, like a lot of the things that I do personally are because like I enjoy so much like playing and just like getting to share the experience with other people, the same like social elements that you and anybody else that's played has like talked about. And so it's like kind of weird thing to like, it's hard to characterize, but yeah, totally hear you that it's I don't know, building community is a very specific thing versus like growing or joining one is like a very, very different kind of vibe. And it's a very unique challenge. So totally,
and I understand
like,
that
respect, and it makes sense.
Right. And I understand that the mindset that I shared there is like, a little bit selfish. And I'd say in an ideal world where I had a limited amount of hours, like I would be able and want to dedicate a lot more time to like growing the sport in a general sense. But here we are.
Well, I mean, like, I'll be honest, like I'm pretty selfish too. Like not to say like that I do so much amazing stuff, but it, some people might contrast like, oh, Ben, you do a lot of other things, so it's like it's so selfless.
Sure.
So just like speak to like the other side of that is, I think everyone's like pretty self-interested. It manifests in particular ways, and you could posture one way or another to like make it sound like, oh, like look at like if you uploaded your footage, if you uploaded like your pickup games, like, and you were like, hey, you're welcome everybody, here's Ryder at pickup, like you could like put on this like on like this song and dance of like, wow, like this is such a good thing for everybody I'm doing by filming like Ryder, because he doesn't even play in tournaments. So like, this is the only place you can see Ryder play Roundnet.
Sure.
And like that, you could brand in a particular way. And then at the same time, you could be like, here's my pickup games with like Dan, Clark, Ryder, Grant, me, like,
do what you want. Yeah.
It's about the same thing. So like, there's definitely an element of branding to it. And like, I think like, I don't know, sometimes, like you mentioned, you found yourself kind of just like going to all these tournaments. There's maybe a lack of intentionality behind things, but usually when there's intentionality in like doing something for yourself, for the community that you're part of, for growing around it, like there's some self-involved like part of it. And I think like the big unlock that I work a lot on is trying to connect like more self-interest and like internal motivations to grow, develop, like have experiences the same way that like we've spent money having those experiences into connecting those back to making Roundnet bigger and better, which is obviously harder because it means you have to like kind of thread the needle on that. But I think like self-interest is a really powerful tool. So like using it, kind of not necessarily for good or bad, but just for Roundnet as like I think like a really untapped opportunity. But you're super right to do whatever you want to do. Like, I don't think anyone
Right.
makes you feel bad about that. So it's just
No.
it's just funny way you like frame that as all. So I don't know, maybe this is a helpful thing for anybody else that thinks about like, will I only do this thing? Like, again, if you like do it and you're like
Right.
an asshole about it, then like that is bad, but not because of what you're doing, but because of like how you go about it. So
yeah, no, I definitely
most people around it are not doing it that way, which is great.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll definitely say I don't, feel bad about my time commitments. I do truly think any time spent, and especially the people who are spending a lot of time growing Roundnet, like that is awesome. And I think that is awesome. And I more just wanted to say, I salute that. I understand that's not my time, breakdown, and that's cool. I'm not, you're right. I'm not really apologizing for that. It's just what's the stage of life I'm in now. I mean, I've been in the sport for whatever it is, 5-6 years. So
definitely. I know this has been a really long chat. I want to check if there's anything else that you wanted to touch on. You already got like your ad reads in for Big Bird or what else? What is it?
Whoa, I don't know. Big Bird.
Sorry, what was the chicken place? I got it wrong.
Oh, Bird Call. Yeah,
Call?
I got.
I was like, I'm just thinking Sesame Street. But yeah, like, was there anything else around like how you think about like being a pro, or anything else you wanted to just touch on?
No, I've really gotten to say a lot of it. I think the only last thing that I would want to say is like I think it's really cool when people are like intrinsically motivated and they're setting goals, especially athletic goals, and they want to accomplish them. It's always really exciting to see people come up from, being good players to being great players, and to know all the work that went into it. Like, for example, like Kieran and Connor this past season. It's like, that's so cool. Like I know how much work that they put in, and they did it, without the promise of that this was going to financially, not even the promise, with the guarantee that it wasn't going to financially pay off for them.
It was just for them.
Exactly. I think that is awesome. I think that those are the kind of things that like make life really valuable and could provide a lot of joy if you're willing to like find those moments, or find those opportunities. Like there's certainly something to, the reality of life is like, we need money to survive, and you can always just optimize for that. And especially if you're in a life situation where you just like don't have that much time, like that makes total sense if that's like the main thing you're focused on. But as much as you can, I would urge people to like find things, whether that's Roundnet, whether that's insert anything, that like are intrinsically fun and bring you joy, and like set goals around that and pursue it, because it's like cool and fun to do that. And that's just the last thing I'll say.
Well, this is a lovely chat, Matt. I really appreciated where we got to go with it. So thanks for making all the time.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate you having me.
I'll cut off the recording. I might just run into this. Thanks for watching all the way through this video. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and in particular, I hope you're thinking about ways to go around it big and small. Every little action adds up. I mean, if you want to just comment below on what actions you're going to be taking in the next month or so, let me know. It could be as simple as just teaching some drills to a new player, or inviting someone newer to pick up and just growing the scene locally. Maybe you're going to help run an event in your area and just grow community that way by making it a fun space to be in. The only wrong answer is no answer. So hope to see you in the comments, and I look forward to chatting with you all some more.